Hi, Peter Helms with Bigger Transformations again here. And I wanted to talk to you about our shoulder complex and kind of what's starting to happen with most of us as we age. As I talked about previously, a lot of our issues start down in our hips and they start to distort our movement patterns, if you will. And that's where many of us start to end up with upper body issues. If you think about it, a lot of us end up with lower body issues. They kind of, so to speak, go away. And then we end up with an elbow, shoulder, something like that. It's because our hips have distorted that process. But we can kind of separate the two a little bit if we need immediate relief and whatnot from the upper body. You know, what we really need to do is create space between our shoulder blade and our humerus. Over time, because we're trying to keep that compact too much, the tissue gets really tight, starts to restrict our movement patterns. Same thing goes with the scapula. That scapular blade needs to kind of move freely. What happens all through time is we're trying to pack it tight when we're exercising. If you think it's supposed to kind of move, whatnot. Now, if I'm lifting something really heavy, I want to pack that thing tight and kind of move. But when I'm going about my everyday life, I want that fascia to be able to move and be unrestricted, if you will. So, you know, kind of areas that we get gunked up or kind of choking points, like I like to refer to them now, our pec, you know, fibers should be pushing the shoulder complex out and some should be pulling it in. A lot of our pec is really tight, even myself included, and started to kind of distort my rib cage. And this happened when I was, you know, really, really young. And I've started to be able to break up this tissue now and started to get it moving again. And the indentation of my rib cage is finally actually starting to go away. But let's work on this a little bit. I'm going to take the Hypervolt here. I'm going to put it on a setting of 2. You can put it on whatever you're comfortable with. I'm going to kind of round the shoulder in a little bit. I'm going to elevate the shoulder blade. And again, another big one that gets kind of stuck is that levator scapula. It almost ends up really hard and crusty. It actually even gave me a wrinkle in the back of the head, if you will. I was trying years to figure out kind of what happened. Not like I gained a ton of weight, not as thin as I used to be, but I realized now I was trying to drop my shoulder blade down too much for years, and the tissue got really hard because it connects to the back of that shoulder blade there. And when you leave anything in one place for a really long time, what does it do? It becomes very hard, right? So I'm going to get in here. I'm just going to kind of hold it there for a little while. This allows the vibrations to slowly break up the tissue that's become fibrous and doesn't really want to move anymore. It's really what I want to do is I want to get my shoulder out a little bit further. Over time, you can kind of see people, we end up with those kind of sloping shoulders, okay? Some will kind of tense in because they're trying to get power, but because we tense, it doesn't really work well, and we kind of teach ourselves that too. And if you think about why we feel weak, what do we do before something? A lot of times we kind of tense, right? So that tensing response doesn't allow the muscle fibers to lengthen and shorten the way they should. Now, if you go into something a lot kind of more relaxed and confident with, we're going to feel a lot stronger, right? And that's what we need to start doing. We need to start breaking up this tissue, working it. Okay, so now I can start to stretch those fibers, loosen them a little bit. And kind of once this process starts, the cool thing about it is you can keep kind of moving with it if you know the right points to get to. A lot of times we're going to the belly of the muscle, and it's really not doing too much at all. It's loosening the fibers that are still working, if you will, I guess, in some way. What we want to do is we want to bring more of that muscle tissue into play here. I'm going to stay out here a little bit longer. I try to stay a minute, 2. Then I'll start to work the fibrous areas. But I want to get to these kind of junction points. One's in here, the other one's going to be up in the back. Let's think about it. The other thing that moves our arm, right, is our lat. Okay, pulls the arm down. And if I'm always walking around like this, well, guess what? My lat isn't really firing anymore because I'm not bringing it up out of that socket. So the spot I could hit too if I wanted to. Get right underneath that armpit there, get into that insertion. Kind of reach a little bit. I want to kind of stretch. The other reason why I had a really hard time trying to get people's biceps and forearms and kind of all these other muscles to loosen, right? I was always thinking this was lengthened position and proper. No, this is lengthened, right? You know, lengthen that arm, get those fibers moving, right? Same thing kind of with the foot that I was talking about in one of my other videos, is once I get this moving, this stuff all starts moving real easy. That's kind of the great thing about this, right? Another spot I'm going to get to, tricep. Anything kind of Latin here too. Again, that's kind of where we get the lunch lady arms, are kind of flabby, right? Kind of pulling back. Tricep ends up really short. I want to try and lengthen that area. Again, I'm trying to separate. Sometimes what I'll do is kind of grab and pull, reach around there. Now in the beginning, you might not be too flexible and it becomes kind of hard to do this. It was for me even in the beginning, especially my right arm. But the great thing is the more you start to do this, the easier it gets. Right, so I'm going to hit that point a little bit. See, now I can stretch that a little bit better. Now I might even want to kind of target some of those anchor solutions, right, where the lat is. Serratus, there's another reason why the serratus, you think we need to work and loosen it because it gets kind of big. And that's because, again, we're packing that shoulder too tight. We need that shoulder to move. We need that fascia to move. Kind of our rib cage gets really hard. You gotta think back maybe when we're in our 20s or so, or some of you that are in your 20s, how supple our bodies were, and think of, as we age, what happens. We're not as supple and can't move as well. And the reason is tightness. It's not that we need to lift more weights or, exercise more. Don't get me wrong. It's all that stuff's helpful and great, but when we're doing it, if we're in a restricted range of motion, we're actually restricting ourselves more. And you can think, Pilates and yoga and those things are stretching, but a lot of them will elicit the same things we do in everyday life. And we can only take a muscle if it's tight. So say my arm here, and I'm doing the shoulder stretch. It's only go as far as those Golgi tendon receptors go. If I got scar tissue buildup in here, or here, anywhere in here, deltoid, it's only going to go just that far. Now, if I stretch it, and now I use some kind of gun, a hypervolt, or whatever, massage gun, whatever you want, now that Golgi tendon receptor is like, okay, I can move a little bit further. So now, and usually, after a couple tries of this, you can feel it start to stretch and move. And kind of the sky's the limit with this. It's a great part. I can't wait to start developing exercises to facilitate with this. There's a lot of great movements out there, but we need to do ones that we're not commonly used to. All right, thanks for listening.